Am I visible? Yes?
Yes, Farah,
Yes.
you're looking fabulous.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So it is such an incredible honor and a pleasure to be here amongst you all. Now, you know, guys, even though I don a lot of different hats, I am a speaker, a trainer, an advocate, an activist. The one that's closest to my heart is a peacemonger. So basically, as a peacemonger, what I do is that I fiercely promote peace, both within and without. You know, as the great Dalai Lama says, world peace begins with inner peace. So speaking of the importance of maintaining inner peace, today I'm going to share with you a personal story. Okay, are you guys ready? All right.
We are.
So did you guys know that at some point in our lives, we're all going to be handed some kind of weight that's going to feel like it's just too much to carry? Here, take a look at this teacup. Can you guys see it? It's so dainty, isn't it? Right?
Anyone else?
Now, what if I told you that this teacup weighs as much as a brick? Would you guys be willing to carry it for me?
I don't think so.
You know, my dear weightlifters, one of the ways life hands us teacups is through others, often our loved ones. Now, speaking of which, I have an older sister, Alia, and she lives in San Diego, happily married with 3 teenage kids. Actually, there's nothing happy about raising 3 teenagers, is there? I'm sure your moms would agree. But you know, in Alia in San Diego, what I enjoy the most is our tea times. Now, believe it or not, we drink around 5 to 6 cups of tea a day. But that is the only time we get to sit back and relax and just chit chat. Now, like me, Alia also loves drinking tea out of dainty teacups. But let me tell you guys a little bit more about Alia, okay? Now, you know, growing up, Alia was not only considered smart and stunning by everyone who met her, but she's also always been one of those goody two-shoes, you know, who can do no wrong. You know what I mean, right? You know, she's like the daughter whose judgment is always sound, the sister whose opinion is always sought, and the mother whom every woman in the world wants to emulate. But the worst part, she's always correcting me. Actually, scratch that off. The worst part, she's always right and never hesitates to remind me of that. Raise your hand if you have an older sibling. Anyone? Yeah? Don't they drive you crazy, right? Raise your hand if you are the older sibling. Yeah? Now you know you're crazy. You know, guys, 8 years ago, I finally got my chance to be right. Now, it was Halloween night, and I was in San Diego with my kids visiting Alia, and we were just relaxing over a nice cup of tea when suddenly Alia suggested that we take our kids and stand at the door and hand out cookies to all of the neighbors. And I was like, Alia, since when did we start celebrating Halloween? Not to mention parading our kids in costumes while we look like nuns in our hijabs. I thought we were on the same page about raising our kids. We don't dress our kids up as ghosts and goblins, and we don't encourage them to believe in magic and superstition, and we certainly don't make light of a topic as serious as death. You know, guys, for the very first time, I felt like I could beat her at something. I was more religious than her. Yep. Self-righteousness was prickling all over my skin. And then, you know, in a calm and composed manner that was always hers, she said, come on, Sarah, you're not celebrating Halloween. Our kids aren't dressed up in costumes. And look, our house isn't decorated in cobwebs or tombstones. All we are doing is being good neighbors by handing out homemade cookies to the kids. Now, even though she made sense, I didn't want to pass on my one chance to be right. You know, it was rare that I got to feel holier than thou. So I pushed back and I challenged her suggestion. Well, she pushed back and she challenged my objection. Next thing you know, we were debating and then arguing and then shouting while our kids watched petrified. So I grabbed both my kids and I stormed out yelling, I am done with you. Have you ever been so angry at someone that you vowed never to speak to them again?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, guys, believe it or not, I didn't speak to Alia for days. Now, as days became weeks, weeks became months, my anger turned into a grudge. That grudge bubbled over into a simmering resentment. Now, she called a few times, but I just couldn't pick up the phone. My pride wouldn't let me. You know, every weekend, my boys would ask me, Mom, why can't we see Auntie Alia? Mom, why can't we see our cousins? And all I could say was, we just can't, okay? Six months passed, and I hadn't seen or spoken to my sister. Now, calling her meant accepting defeat, and I wasn't ready to do that. All her life, she had been right. Just this one time, I wanted to be right. Now, I did miss her, you know, but it was just too late. The pain was just too deep. Now, that summer, I had a surprise visitor, my papa. I want you guys to all picture Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings. You remember? That's my papa. Yeah, except he's bald and he has no beard. But you know, he has that voice, the deep voice and the stature of Gandalf. And I am still trying to figure out how I turned out to be tiny like Frodo. Now, you know, Papa always calls me his favorite youngest daughter. Now, when Papa was here, I didn't want to jeopardize my high standing with him. And I just wanted him to enjoy his time with me and the kids. So I kept the fight a secret. Now, on his last day, we were just chit-chatting over a nice cup of tea when suddenly he handed me his teacup saying, "Can you hold this for me, my dear?" So I did. And then he said, "You know, Alia called me the other day." I was shocked. I told him I couldn't believe that my perfect sister would call and complain about me. And then he started to tell me that she didn't call to complain. She was actually calling and crying and apologizing to him for hurting me. You know, guys, my heart ached when I heard that. And then I realized that my hand was aching too, because I was still holding on to this cup. So I said, "Papa, can I put this cup down?" "Not yet," he said. "Does it hurt?" I said, "Yeah, Papa, my hand's hurting." "No, my dear, right here. Does it hurt?" With tears in my eyes, I just nodded my head. And then he said, "That's all right. I understand. Now tell me, Sarah, how does that cup feel right now?" You know, by that time, my entire arm felt paralyzed over this dainty cup. So I said, "Papa, it really hurts. Can I please put it down?" As if he saw through my pain, Papa said, "But Sarah, you have been holding on to your cup for 6 months now. Your heart must feel so heavy, isn't it? Put your cup down. Papa was right. Alia had forgiven me, yet I had been holding on to resentment for so long, I felt paralyzed. I needed to put it down. So I said, Papa, you're right. I need to put my cup down. He yelled, put your cup down. You're spilling tea all over my lap. So Papa left that day after I cleaned his pants. But his words of wisdom stayed behind. After 6 months, I put my cup down. And I apologized, called Alia and apologized to her. You know, sometimes in order to be right, all it takes is to admit that we are wrong. And guess what my goody two-shoes sister said? She said, Sarah, we were both wrong by letting our egos take over our hearts. She was so right. And for the first time, I didn't even mind that she was right. Now that weekend, Alia and I got together over tea. And you know something, guys? After talking it through with her, I realized that that feeling of never being good enough, that had caused so much bitterness in me over the past several years, that resentment had been brewing inside of me way longer than those 6 months. It had just bubbled to the surface through that petty argument. Resentments ruined relationships. Pride and petty arguments can never be allowed to weaken the bonds of family or friendship. In my desire to be right about what it means to be a good mother, I had forgotten how wrong it was to be a bad sister. So, my dear fellow weightlifters, have you ever held on to anger, grudge, or resentment over an argument with a friend or a family member, even if you were right and they were wrong? You know, theologian and ethicist Lewis Smead says that to forgive is to set a prisoner free and then discover that the prisoner was you. Because holding a grudge against someone who has hurt you doesn't punish them. It punishes you. Now, letting go isn't about invalidating the pain. It's about refusing to relive the pain over and over and over again. So remember, guys, when you forgive, you heal. And when you let go, you grow. So we all need to reach into our hearts and ask ourselves, what weights are we still holding? Regardless of who's right, who's wrong, it still hurts, doesn't it? You know, the bonds of family and friendship are too precious to be broken. So if you find yourself holding on to a teacup that is weighing you down, don't be a weightlifter. Be a weight watcher and lose that weight by putting your cup, come on, say it, by putting your cup
Down.
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 Excellent. Over to you, Lena.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah. This was a very
Eva.
heartfelt story, and I really hope everybody can benefit from it and use this opportunity to just contact anybody that they have not talked to for a very, very long time because of holding a grudge or holding their cup of tea. I really hope everybody benefits, and gets rid of grudges. It's not good. Grudges are bad.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Eva, and thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ghada.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful speech and story. And now we'll be sharing an inspirational video with you all about the inspirational women in history in our lives.
Growing up in Mississippi, my prayer was, for as long as I can remember, God, use me. Use me, use this life. I don't know what the future holds for me, but I know that there is a vision for my life that is greater than my imagination can hold. Use me, use me. What would you have me to do? And that dream, that desire, that prayer brought me somehow to television.
And she's gonna learn that this life will hit you hard in the face, wait for you to get back up just so it can kick you in the stomach. But getting the wind knocked out of you is the only way to remind your lungs how much they like the taste of air.
If we want to give all of our children a foundation for their dreams and opportunities worthy of their promise, if we want to give them that sense of limitless possibility, that belief that here in America, there is always something better out there if you're willing to work for it, then we must work like never before.
To those waiting with bated breath for that favorite media catchphrase, the U-turn, I have only one thing to say. U-turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
You might never fail on the scale I did, but some failure in life is inevitable. It is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default.
Each of us must truly be a woman in the world. We need to be as fearless as the women whose stories you have applauded, as committed as the dissidents and activists you have heard from, as audacious as those who start movements for peace when all seems lost. Together, I do believe it is part of the American mission to ensure that people everywhere, women and men alike, finally have the opportunity to live up to their own God-given potential.
After watching this inspirational video, we're now very excited to start the interactive live session with our guest speakers. Eva, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lean. Ms. Ghada, let's start with you. What is one thing you wish all women knew?
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you all for having me. One thing, well, there was a phrase that I used to hate when I was younger. And that phrase was, the only limitations you have are the ones you set for yourself. I used to think that this phrase was only said by the privileged one who didn't actually face any limitations. But as I grew up and fought through my own challenges and hardships, it makes more sense to me now. Society and social and other circumstances can present some extremely hard challenges and barriers. But even in these hardships and challenges, you can strategically fight through them and find what truly makes you shine. As someone who grew up in a conservative society, grabbing what I wanted was not exactly an option or even a smart option. And so something that I really don't hear enough, and I really want to convey that to the younger women, especially, is to smartly and strategically get what you want. Be smart about how you reach things you want, how to communicate the things you want, how and when to have middle ground if needed, when to sacrifice things and when not to sacrifice things. And so something that I wish all women knew and everyone frankly knew is to know how to strategically and smartly achieve your goal.
Thank you so much for a great answer, actually. I think it's so true that everyone, especially us as students now, we have to know that everything requires strategic planning. As you said, we need to take the chance, but carefully think about it and carefully choose what chance to take. Thank you. Our next question is to you, Dr. Mareike. What's been your greatest reward in your professional career?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me. My greatest reward in my professional career, I think, was to experience the unexpected. If you had said to me when I was in school and 16 years old that on the 21st of March 2021, I would be speaking here to all of you about the kind of work that I'd been doing, I would have thought that's crazy. That will never happen to me. And my career has taken so many different turns that I didn't expect, that I didn't plan for, that I could embrace, that I think that is my greatest reward. I've always been surprised.
Thank you, Doctor. So I guess surprises are basically a thing to expect along the way, no matter what, no matter who you are and whatever you're trying to achieve. Along these lines, Mr. Naqi, hello, how are you?
Hello, assalamu alaikum, and good morning and good afternoon to everybody. Great to be here and thanks for having me.
Hello. So my question for you is, how do you think men could become more of an ally instead of a blocker when it comes to women progressing?
Well, that's a great question, because oftentimes when we think about certain agendas, for example, the disability agenda or the race agenda, and obviously today we're talking about the gender agenda, it's really important to see how we can take people along the way with us, because sometimes when we think about the fact, for example, women have been in some ways oppressed for a long time, haven't had equal opportunity, haven't been able to accomplish their dreams in some ways as easily, for example, as men have been able to because of a certain privilege that they hold. It's kind of in some ways natural for people to think, oh, men are actually the adversary and people that block us from achieving what we want. You know, you often hear about the glass ceiling that kind of women have to break to achieve success. But actually what's really important is to, instead of reinventing the wheel and in some ways making more enemies as we go along, let's think about how we can take people on the journey with us. Because when we take people with more experience, when we take people as allies who can back us up, guess what? Your movement actually becomes much bigger, a lot stronger, and you're able to make more friends along the way instead of more enemies. You know, as they say, if you want to walk fast, you walk together, but if you want to walk far, you're going to walk, sorry, if you want to walk fast, you walk alone. If you want to walk far, you walk together. And I think that's what we need to do when it comes to advancing this agenda forward, when it comes to bringing more equal opportunity. Let's see how we can take men along the journey with us. And the UN He for She campaign, for example, is a great example where men are encouraged to actively support, right? Because one of the other things which I found really interesting when it came to the race topic last year after the unfortunate death of George Floyd, for example, was, you know, people were saying I'm not racist, but it's not actually enough to say I'm not racist. What's more important is I'm anti-racist, because it's about the action side of things that we need to demonstrate. It's not good enough just to say, yeah, I support this and I'm not, for example, against this. So I think all of us here, be it men or women, need to think about how can we become allies to other people. And it might just be, you know, a dad becoming an ally to his daughter, or a husband to his wife, or a teacher to one of his students, for example, and then see how we can make this movement grow and make it even better than it already is.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think this just brings us back to where everything actually originates. It's all about like society. How can we all work together as a society? And this brings us to the next question to you, Ms. Ghada. Did you feel like cultures and traditions held you back from succeeding?
You know, although, as I said, I grew up in a conservative society, I did have an amazing support from my community, from my family, from my friends, which made nothing stop me. Cultures and traditions, well, for me at least, were the essence of actually my work, my business, GCon, and exactly how to make a community of people who are interested in the gaming industry that fits just fine within our standards, within our culture and traditions. So for me, culture and our culture and tradition did not actually stop me. It was what motivated me to do what I'm doing right now.
Thank you, Ms. Ghada. So I'm very glad your experience with culture was not negative, unlike the stereotypes in general. They always seem to say that, oh, culture and tradition ruins all opportunities or hold you back, but it didn't hold you back. And here you are, incredibly successful. Dr. Mareike, my next question for you is, did you find it difficult to find a work and life balance?
It's interesting that you asked me the question in the past tense. Did I find it difficult? I find it difficult every day. I continue to find it difficult every day. I really work a lot, and I am arguably too much. But actually, I think about work-life balance in a slightly different ways. It's always kind of presented as if one needs to fight the other. Right, that's the implication of it. And a few years ago, I read a fantastic book called The Three Marriages: Reimagining Work, Self, and Relationship, by an author called David White. And he made what for me was a very convincing argument, and I'm trying to kind of let me guide this, which is that he said we're setting up with this idea of a work-life balance, we're kind of setting ourselves up for a battle, because we're pretending as if we don't take ourselves to work, and as if we only live once we leave work. And of course we know all that's not true. The whole point why we work beyond the need to make a livelihood, but we want to take ourselves to work. We want to find fulfilling careers. So it's actually a pretty artificial division. And yes, when it comes to work hours, maybe you would want to draw more of a line, but as a concept, it's pretty artificial. And he suggested that it would be much easier to understand that everyone's life has these three components. One is the self, one is work, and one is the relationship. And these are the three marriages that everyone has. And relationships, of course, can cover everything from family, friends, to your life partner. And he says that these things will always be in a kind of, not a competition with each other, but they will take different turns of being more important than others. So there will be times when somebody feels a lot of need to invest more time in the relationship. Sometimes there's maybe need to invest more time at work. And so rather than thinking of this as a permanent battle, I started to think of it in this way. And I thought, okay, sometimes other things need to take a step back, because I need to put my effort and my energies here right now. And I find this really, really a helpful way of thinking about it, and also getting through really tough times when you do have a lot of work and you think, I really wish I had a day off. The other thing I think that's more important for me in this question about the work-life balance isn't so much how do you divide the two, but how do you avoid taking some of the challenges that work brings into your personal life? And I think that maybe is a more important thing for me to think about. If you pursue great dreams, if you pursue a challenging career, it will be challenging. There will be a lot of moments when you feel inadequate with yourself because you haven't been able to do something that you thought you could do. There will be tension, there will be conflict with others. If you want to challenge others, which is the theme of today's meeting, not everyone likes to be challenged. There will be tension in your career. So for me, it's more important to think of the work-life difference as saying, I have a professional personality, and if I have tension at work and on an issue that I disagree with someone else, I don't need to take that tension into my life. It doesn't mean that I'm not a likable person. It doesn't mean that I've done, that I'm not capable of this. It is just a different kind of personality. And that to me is how I think about this and how I, for myself, try to balance really sometimes quite big work demands.
I think that just brought a different perspective on what we think of when we think of work-life balance. But it's definitely like opened my eyes up to how that just makes more sense instead of just trying to deal with it as a battle. And this brings us to our next question to you, Mr. Naqi. What challenges have you noticed women in the professional workplace go through?
Oh, that is a very loaded question, because you could go on and on about this for a long, long time. And there's obviously very real challenges with which women face, and having worked in kind of the corporate world for maybe the past kind of 4 or 5 years now, I think there's different challenges depending on what organization you work for, what country, what region as well. Obviously what Saudi has, and I've worked there for a couple of years as well, is a bit different to what you see here in the UK, for example. So one of them might be around stereotypes, which I think is very unfortunate, but a really real one as well, where people might think, oh, women, for example, are more emotional, aren't very good at decision making. Sometimes they allow their heart to rule over their head. And while we might not actively think about them, the fact that we subconsciously have them as a bias is bad in itself, because you don't actively have to think, oh, this person's doing this because of this. But when you have those subconscious biases, it manifests itself in the way you, for example, run a team, or in the way you run an organization. So women, for example, might have challenges once they've had a child and they take a year off for maternity leave. Now, coming back can be really hard, because you've been off work for a year. You expect your organization to be supportive and to allow you to integrate back, but also in some ways pick up from where you left off, right? Because after a year, like if I take a 2-week holiday, I sometimes feel a bit rusty coming back to work, let alone a year. But the flip side as well, which I found really interesting, and having spoken to quite a few women recently as well about it, I think in some places and in some parts of the world, maybe we're actually going to the other extreme, where some women, for example, who choose, let's say, to be a homemaker and raise kids and not work because they don't feel the need to, or they're more passionate about staying at home, they're actually looked down upon by other women themselves, which is a real shame. Because if you talk to most feminists, for example, and again, feminism is a whole new topic which has such a wide spectrum, but generally when you look at the essence of feminism, it's about empowering women and giving them the choice to lead the life that they want. But I think now we're reaching a stage in some places where if you don't want to work, it's like, well, you aren't really a strong enough woman. And that's probably not where we want to get to, right? Because everyone has different choice. Not everyone, including males, for example, not everyone wants to be a managing director or a CEO, because we all have really different priorities in life. We can't just look at a model and think that we can replicate that for all different cultures and classes, religions, whatever. So I think what we actively all need to think about, and according to the theme of today, choose to challenge, be it men, women, or whoever. You just need to think about what really matters to you, because at the end, you'll have to live with whatever decisions you take. So don't really go with, just because the society wants me to do A, B, and C, that's what I'm going to do. And yes, when you're sometimes standing alone and when you decide to do what you want, there's going to be lots of challenges that you will encounter. But guess what? As we saw in that video when J.K. Rowling talked about failure, you sometimes have to be risky. You have to fail because that's how you learn. But it still won't be that bad because you've made that decision for yourself rather than someone else like your parents or the society making it for you. So sorry for the long-winded answer, but I think there are lots of challenges in both directions. Let's just think about how we can achieve our potential and our success/fulfillment rather than worrying about what society necessarily wants.
Thank you, Mr. Naqi. I just want to say that I love how you explained it in a way that we should define success and progress based on our own life, our own personality, and what are our priorities. Ms. Ghada, how did you handle the pressure of reestablishing a whole organization?
I was actually blessed with an organization that is much loved, that has already achieved a lot. However, I was left with GCON with nothing, so I had to build it from scratch and from my own perspectives and plans when I was 20 years old. To know what I wanted to do with the organization, with GCON, I had to know what I personally wanted to do. It wasn't easy. It was very hard, and it was very stressful. And so I tried so many approaches, and eventually made it to where GCON is now. Loving what I do and loving what GCON represents in empowering women in the gaming industry is what motivated me to bear the pressure and learn from the experiences. So the pressure is there, the stress is there, but always having in mind that what actually keeps you going, what motivates you, enjoying and loving what you do is how I handled all this.
That's actually amazing. The fact that you had something that you love so much, something you were very passionate about, and you had the ability to just reestablish an organization just fascinates us all. And we're very excited to hear more about this, how GCON came to be as well. And our next question is to you, Dr. Mareike. We've spoken about your greatest reward in your career. What about the greatest difficulty, or the most difficult decision you ever had to make?
I'm going to get a reputation for always saying this is not how I think about it. But actually, this is not how I think about it. I don't think about decision making as one big moment that I arrive at, and then I need to, it's almost, like a traffic, and you need to say, is my life going to go left or is my life going to go right? That's not how I think about it. And I think actually the hardest decisions are the everyday small decisions that we need to make. I sometimes think, when you, for example, when you make a choice after you finish school, do you want to have a family? Do you want to go to university? Do you want to have a traineeship? All these choices that might open up. This seems like a very big decision at the time, and it almost, it can be paralyzing to think, but if I study mathematics now, what about if I'm really good at art? What do I miss out on? And that's tricky to then make a decision on the basis of this. And I go back to these big decisions and say, but life is complicated and long and surprising, hopefully long and surprising. And actually, you make a decision today that seems like a very big decision, but you make it on the basis of very limited information. This is not just because you haven't lived your life yet, you don't know yet what will be turning out to be really something valuable to know, but it is actually a human condition. Humans, we always overestimate how much we know about something, and then we make decisions based on, our own overestimation. So some of these big decisions, it will be impossible to really understand the consequences. So they shouldn't look like such big decisions, I don't think. But I think what's really much harder is to have a clear idea for yourself about what are the everyday small decisions that I need to make. And that actually, if I don't make them and if I don't stick to my decisions, the effect that will have on the way that I live my life will be much, much greater. So the small decision would, for example, if you want to be an athlete, The decision that even on a Sunday and Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday morning, you will get up at 5 in the morning to go and swim for an hour in the pool because you're training to be a swimmer. If you skip that one day, then you can never get it back. And the cumulative effect of that will be you won't be as good a swimmer as you wanted to be. So these things to me are much more important. I write a lot and I find writing really, really hard, despite the fact that I do it a lot. So sometimes I really have to push myself and I have to sit down and I say, today I will write an hour. It's painful. I don't seem to be able to get my thoughts on the paper in the way I want to, but I make this decision and tomorrow I will make it again. And then I look back and 10 years later, I think, yeah, every day I did this and here's what this accomplished. So for me, the small decisions, but making them every day are much more important.
Thank you, Doctor. I really love how you spoke about it, and I hope everybody can use it in their life and actually implement it. Like, give yourself small everyday tasks and do them instead of give a huge plan and then fall out of it because it's too overwhelming. Mr. Naqi, who's the woman in your life that inspires you the most and why?
What's the woman that inspires me the most? I think you're asking me all the tricky questions today. You know, when I think about the role of women in my life, I have to say it's absolutely huge. From my grandma to my mom to my sister to my aunts, even to some of the teachers that I've had, it's been absolutely tremendous. And of course, not to mention some of the great, great, great women in history who've really shaped the course of the world so powerfully. But I think if I had to say one woman, it would be my mum. And that's for lots of different reasons. I guess one of them is she'll hopefully make me nice food when I see her next. But more importantly, most of the audience might not know that I'm completely blind, right? So I was born with this eye condition and I lost my sight completely by the age of 7. Now, as a child, I didn't really know what this world's about. I didn't really know how I can be successful or what I need to do to cope. But my parents really took it upon themselves, despite having no prior experience at all around disability, to really think about how can we give him a good life? How can we educate him? And in some ways show him that this world is full of endless possibilities. And they did that in so many beautiful ways. And, you know, just echoing what Mareike said previously, you know, it's about those small decisions. It's about that continuous action rather than necessarily those big, big milestones. Obviously, those are important as well, but it's that thing that you do every single day. So she, in some ways, from when I was very young, empowered me to think, don't let other people define what you can and cannot do, because people are very quick to jump on that bandwagon and say, actually, because you can't see, I don't think you can do science. It's too visual. And that's not coming from a bad place. And sometimes we just think if people are discouraging, it's not always because it's ill-intended. They are saying it because they probably don't want you to struggle. But I think what they often don't realize as well, that some people can take it too seriously, and that can then define the course of their life, which is really, really sad. You know, one of the famous persons said, like 20 years down the line, you might regret the things you didn't do more than the ones you actually did. So it's about not having those regrets. And for my parents and my mom to kind of empower me with that confidence to say, don't let anyone define what you can and cannot do. Yes, it's going to be hard, but there'll be people who'll stand by you. And in some ways, there's going to be people, interestingly or paradoxically, who will oppose you, but that will actually help you go forward. You know, when we think about kites, for example, they fly against the wind and not with it. So sometimes we think about opposition as a really negative thing, but it's actually not. If you think about politics, for example, when it comes to elections, if there were no opposition parties, you know, the government wouldn't really have to work that hard to kind of defend itself. But it's because of that opposition that we think, oh, I actually need to up my game a little bit more and really show what I'm made of. And oftentimes in hardship is when your essence comes out even more. So when I study physics, for example, you know, friction isn't actually such a bad thing, because yes, it's a negative force in some ways, but guess what? None of us could drive on the road if there was no friction. You know, all it takes for someone is to drive on ice to see how bad and how tricky that can be. So I have to say, she kind of empowered me with that knowledge, but kind of kept reiterating through various parts of my life. When I wanted to do engineering, when I wanted to do science, even when I wanted to come to the UK, to a completely unfamiliar place where I didn't really know anyone. I'd never been to the West before. I did not really know what it would hold for me, whether it would be good or bad. And sometimes, it's important for all of us to take those risks, to be a bit more risky, and to explore what the world has to offer us. So I hope that, even if we might not have had the most supportive people around us, I hope that we can be supportive to other people. So the next time someone comes to you and goes like, I really want to do this, and the first thought that might come to your mind is, I don't think you can because of X, Y, and Z. But just try and reframe that. Think about it from a growth mindset point of view, and think how you can be an enabler for that person rather than a hindrance. And again, it comes back to the first question which you asked me around allyship, and I think that's the important move. We need to find more allies, and we need to find more people who can help us become more fulfilled.
Everything you said is just absolutely true. We definitely need to take more risks, and as you said, the people need to be more of an enabler instead of hindering with people and trying to just bring them down whenever they say something new or something different. And as you said, yeah, we definitely need to think and in other people's perspective and try to put ourselves in their shoes, try to encourage them and actually uplift them. And our next question is to you, Ms. Ghada. If you could start all over again, what would you do differently? All right, so let's move on. Let's go back to you, Dr. Mareike. So one of our questions that I think we need to give kind of a backstory to is we got to know about your trip to Africa. And during your trip to Africa, what motivated you to arrange a meeting with Joseph Kony?
Yes, that has a bit of a backstory. So I work in Africa. My organization is headquartered in Nairobi and in Kenya. And a lot of my research work for the past almost 20 years has been focused on the Central African and East African region. Uganda, Kenya, South Sudan, primarily Central African Republic and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And my research is on peace and conflict. And I am also, beyond that, I'm really very interested in, I guess the easiest way to capture it is the human condition. What happens when somebody decides to very violently start a political struggle, but the violence takes over everything? It is completely overwhelming. The political struggle that maybe once upon a time might have informed it disappears into the background. It is only about violence. And the situation in Uganda, which was a war that started in 1986 between the government of Uganda and the rebel group that later became to be known as the Lord's Resistance Army, is one of those political struggles that started with a political grievance, with a power battle between different forces in a country, and then turned really very violent, and for many, many years was one of really the world's worst humanitarian situations, because there were an entire population of a part of the country was living in displacement camps for well over 10 years. So it was a very dramatic humanitarian and political situation. It was also a very dramatic situation in terms of even understanding, how did it get to this? What happened here? Why is it possible that out of a political grievance comes this crazy violence, this war that just keeps going on and that so many civilians had to suffer from? And so that was my interest, and I'm a researcher, so I want to ask the question to the people in the midst of it. And so I managed to do that with the leader of the Lord's Resistance Army. And of course, this is a violent rebel group. You can't just pick up the phone and call him. They still are somewhere in the jungle, in the wilderness in Central Africa. And I didn't as such even arrange a meeting. I was kind of offered a meeting because it was at a time when a new international institution called the International Criminal Court had just been established and had issued an arrest warrant for him, the first ever issued by the International Criminal Court, for crimes against humanity. And I happen to know a lot of these kind of mechanisms behind international justice. And so one of his contacts asked if I could explain to them what this meant, because of course they were so isolated from any international development that they didn't understand what is it, what is this International Criminal Court. So that's how I was invited to come and speak to him. It wasn't so much that I decided I would arrange a meeting, but that gave me the opportunity to then ask these questions and say, why did we end up here? Why did we end up in this war so full of violence? And of course you don't get a satisfying answer, because if somebody's in the midst of this war, their hearts are so full of grievance, they can only see the grievance. But nonetheless, it's from a research perspective, it's an interesting document, the conversation with him, to understand how someone like him, who has spent 30 years, almost 40 years fighting from the bush, how he understands what happened, why a political contestation turned so violent. So it's a little bit different from a research point of view. It's really not as heroic as it might sound, that I arranged a meeting. I'm a researcher and I follow trails and I try to understand things. And I was kind of asked for this, whether I would join this meeting, rather than me saying I would really like to meet.
Either ways, I think you were very courageous to do this, because I can't imagine sitting with someone that has this much violence in them and being able to talk with them and ask them questions. So our theme for this year for Women's Day was choose to challenge. So our most important question for all of our speakers is, what did you choose to challenge? Ms. Ghada, can you go first?
I honestly, for at least, let's say for this year, which matches the theme actually, I did choose to challenge myself. So I reestablished Econ and became CEO with zero knowledge of business management. However, letting go was not an option for me. I decided to challenge myself to do this and learn through the journey and make it work, especially in these hard times of the pandemic and all that. So I did consider a lot letting go of the things of Econ and things I do love, but I did challenge myself to make it work, and it is working now.
It is absolutely working. It's very obvious on how determined and passionate you are with your work.
Thank you.
What about you, Mr. Naqi? What did you choose to challenge?
I think it's not just something that I can say in the past what I chose to challenge, but I think something that you continue to challenge, right? Because I don't think anyone here can say that their life is without challenges. And to be honest, if it was, I think it'd be a really boring life. I think challenges is what makes it fun, right? When you're aiming for a goalpost, when you're aiming to kind of achieve something, when you're trying to break that glass ceiling or trying to do it. But I think the most important thing in some ways is, when you think about victory, or when you think about achievement, it's about competing against yourself rather than other people. So the point earlier, it's about success is not measured by, how much money do I have compared to Warren Buffett, for example, or someone. It's about, am I satisfied? Am I here? Or have I got what I sought to get out? So I think for me, it wasn't necessarily something I chose to challenge. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff in the past, but it's something that I continue to challenge, and that is perceptions of people, especially when it comes to disabilities. The minute you speak to someone and tell them that, oh, I have a disability, one of the first things is either sympathy, oh no, that is really sad, oh, which is terrible because no one wants that, or it's apathy, which is indifference. I think what we need in the world when it comes to all of this stuff is empathy, somewhere in the middle, somewhere where you can walk in that person's shoes to see what they see, to hear what they hear, and to feel what they feel. Because oftentimes we're too quick to judge people. If we see someone who, for example, can't see, it's like, how can you do something like engineering? It's not going to work. Rather than saying, how can I help you achieve this? And how do you think we can make it work? And that's, again, when it comes back to the growth mindset side of things, right? So that's one of the things I continue to challenge in my school, in my university, even when I did engineering, and in my workplace. I've been the only visually impaired person who's been there. And I've had to constantly answer that question, how can you do this? rather than necessarily saying, how can we help you in all of this? So that's something which is a constant struggle. It's a struggle even when I'm, let's say, walking outside with my cane and people don't necessarily understand. It's a struggle when it comes to running, when I, for example, need a guide runner because I need to be tethered to them, so it's kind of they can be my eyes whilst I'm running. So I think for all of us, there's going to be things that are close to our heart, things that we want to challenge. And I hope that we all can do that and to have that passion. And when you are passionate about something that you want to achieve, that energy and the motivation somehow comes from within. But if you're forced to do something, you probably won't, then will probably end up giving up. So find your passion and then challenge something so that you can make a difference. And I had this really powerful quote a few years ago, which has resonated with me and has kind of stuck with me, which goes something along the lines of, when you die and when all the people you know die, if you did not do anything significant in your life, it's as if you were never born. Because many of us, many people before us have passed away, millions of them, and we don't really know much about them. And it's only the few who've tried to change the world by choosing to challenge. And again, this is really important, choosing to, because it's a choice and it's an active choice. It's not something passive. When you choose to challenge, that's the only way you can make a difference and change the world, not just for yourself, but for other people as well.
It's a choice to challenge. You choose what you want to do. You choose what things that are hard or not easy for you. You choose what to do and what to not do. So I think what you said is like perfectly on point. Dr. Mareike, what did you choose to challenge?
I think we're all developing a common theme here. I think it's very similar what I would say about this, that yes, my comfort zone, maybe in terms of what I said earlier, come at the aspects of my life with the realization that doing good work is hard and having good relationships is hard, and having a life that you find fulfilling and meaningful and that makes a contribution in whichever way Naqi just pointed out is also hard. That's a perpetual challenge. And I think it's good to lean into this and to think through for myself, what do I think are good ideas? What are good ways of working with people? What are good ways of constructively challenging someone with whom I disagree? And what are good ways for me to react to someone who really challenges me and really profoundly disagrees with me on something? Because sometimes it's easier to be the person challenging than it is to be the person being challenged. And it's harder to find ways to deal with that. But I want to add something about this idea of success, because I think that was also a challenge that I had to come to realize, that success really is not a lonely thing. So it's really important, this idea of redefining your success and finding ways that it matters to you. But I think what's for me very important is that you're never alone in the success. And I want to take the examples of some of the women we saw in the opening trailer. We saw people like Marie Curie and Emmeline Pankhurst and so on. And yes, maybe some of us, one of us even in this forum this morning, will win a Nobel Prize. And if you do, I will forever tell everyone that I was once in a Zoom meeting with you. But it's probably not that likely that any of us will do. But what is more important is to also understand how one person's success that actually does improve the world is built by many other people. And I think science is such a good example of this. So the reason why one scientist can make one discovery that forever changes everything is because there were maybe generations of scientists before that who eradicated other options. And they never get appreciated for that. If you run an experiment and you say, well, this one doesn't work, it's not a great thing to come home for it. But actually, for science, it's a great thing because nobody else needs to do the same experiment and to say, we already know, it's not this explanation. So this joint building of success is really, really important. And it's sometimes sheer luck whether you're the person in the middle who, or maybe always sheer luck, whether you're the one person in the middle who then gets to have their name on it. But the contribution that is made before that by many, many, many others is as important. And I think one way to challenge myself is to sometimes remind myself of that success is also really not a selfish thing if you are contributing to a bigger cause. And how that contribution looks like for you and what that bigger cause is, that, is for everyone else individually to pick. But I think a really great challenge is to say, I really should never think of myself as alone in this. We're all in this together.
Yes, we are all definitely in this together. And thank you so much. That was like such a great message. And we want to encourage everyone who's listening to us. We want you to also ask yourself the same question. What did you choose to challenge, or what are you continuously choosing to challenge? And now that we've wrapped up the question and answer session, we're very excited to start the rapid fire questions. The rapid fire questions rounds will be moderated by Eva, and they're going to be answered very briefly and as fast as possible, although you have the chance to think about your answer. We're going to be timing it in order to not go overboard, but we want you to answer as honestly as possible and as quickly as possible.
So, Mr. Naqi, are you ready?
I hope so. Go on.
Lean, is the timer ready? Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's go. When you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
Doing sports, mainly running, cycling, and tennis.
Beautiful. What was your favorite subject in school?
Maths, without a doubt.
Okay. What is your favorite book?
Well, that's a really tricky one. I'll give a slightly diplomatic answer and say I can't pinpoint one. I think there's so many books that I've read, and all of them have given me so many lovely messages to take away and so many personal insights that I will always cherish.
Books are amazing. What's your hidden talent?
Oh, I think it's probably playing the piano and singing along.
You're good, right?
I don't know. I think you can ask the audience when I next play.
What is something that you've done that made you feel extreme happiness?
So my friend and I embarked on this project where for 2 years we did something called Random Acts of Kindness, and every single day we just did something very small to a stranger, something unexpected, even if it's just smiling at them, greeting at them, asking how the day was, or taking sweets for them. And that for me just showed those small acts can make such a big difference.
That's very precious. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
This too will pass. Because when you're too happy and when you're thinking about, oh, life's beautiful and stuff, let it humble you and say, actually, this won't last forever. But at the same time, if you're sad, if you're lonely and depressed, think about it as well. This too will pass. There will come a time when the sun will rise again.
What is your happy place?
Being in the company of my loved ones, for sure.
What is your favorite meal?
Fried chicken with French fries, a nice fruit juice, and some ice cream afterwards. Very unhealthy.
What is a dream that you have yet to achieve?
Oh God, so many. So many. I think one of the biggest ones, which is an almost unachievable goal, but hopefully will be achieved at some point, is to give equal opportunity to everyone, regardless of their circumstance. So not equality, but equity.
Equity is the best. Okay. We'll move to Dr. Mareike. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yes, I think.
If you could trade lives with anyone, who would that be?
No one. Everyone has hidden secrets that I really don't want to know. So, I would stick where I am.
Great answer. What is the first thing you do when you get up in the morning?
Make a cup of tea.
Lovely. If you can get yourself anything, what would you get?
Time.
Time. Okay. Where would you go if you were invisible?
Oh, that's a very good question. Into the halls of power. Wouldn't you love to be in the White House when they're debating something? Something like that.
That would be really fun. What is one thing you've always wanted to do?
Write a piece of music that I like.
You can do it. It's never too late.
Thank you.
Do you prefer the morning, the noon, or the night?
Oh, morning to an extreme. I am absolutely a morning person, and I stop functioning by around 8 p.m.
Are you a dog or a cat person, or neither?
More of a dog, but not as extreme as some of the other people in my life who could talk about dogs for hours.
What is the best compliment you've ever received?
Somebody once said to me, not everyone has something to say, but you're one of the people who does. So say it.
That's really nice. How do you start your day? I already asked you that. Make a cup of tea, right?
Yes.
Okay. What would you do on a rainy day?
I would make tea, and then I would read a lot.
What is your favorite exercise?
Probably cycling, actually.
Cycling is fun. Who do you admire the most? Maybe a celebrity, perhaps.
My admiration kind of waxes and wanes as my interests change, right? So it's difficult for me to say one person, but I always really admire people, built on what I said earlier, who dedicate their lives to get a little bit of improvement every day. So I really admire people who need to practice every day, musicians, athletes, people who need to just stick with what they do.
Okay, thank you. Time is up. Now, Ms. Ghada, what is your favorite summer activity?
Oh, that's a tough one since we have a very unpleasant summer. I think swimming.
Okay, swimming. Are you a morning or a night person?
Oh, morning, definitely.
Morning. What is your favorite hobby?
I do gaming, taekwondo, horse riding, so all that.
List goes on. Okay. In your opinion, are you a follower or a leader?
Oh, I'm definitely a leader.
What are you afraid of?
Airplanes.
Oh. What do you think a person needs to be happy?
Being satisfied with what you have.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
I mean, we drink in these small cups, so I'd say about 30.
Okay. What was your lifelong dream? And have you fulfilled it?
I would say I don't have a specific dream. They just keep updating.
Okay. What is one thing you've always wanted to do but couldn't?
But couldn't?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Live, and I mean, somewhere that is not as hot.
Okay, so a bit
anywhere that is. Yeah.
What is your best childhood memory?
When we visited our farm.
Ooh. If you won $1 million, what would you buy?
I would definitely invest it on Gcon. We need the money.
If you had access to a time machine, where would you go? What time? And I mean, what century or whatever, or where?
I don't have a specific century, but I just would go back in history. I love history so much. So anytime, really.
What makes you feel sad?
Seeing my loved ones sad, definitely.
No. Okay, so time is up. That's 2 minutes. Now we're done with our rapid fire session. And I just want to thank you all. Thank you for your time. And I am very grateful that we were able to have this webinar go very smoothly. And I hope all our audience learned something today.
Yes, thank you all for being here. Thank you to our lovely guests and everyone for listening, for tuning in and just being here with us today. And now we'd like to introduce the Student Council Advisor and the woman behind this all, Ms. Ghada.
Thank you, Lean and Eva, for such an amazing session. Before I present my vote of thanks, I just wanted to say something what Einstein said. He said that when we are sitting on a hot stove, 1 minute passes like 1 hour. But when we are sitting like with beautiful people like you all, even 1 hour passes like a second. And this is what happened right now. 1 hour is just passed in a blink of a second. So moving on to the last leg of our webinar, I would like to invite our school head, Mr. Maher, to say a few words and to present the certificates to our esteemed distinguished guests. Over to you, Mr. Maher.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Mumtaz. Actually, I am I know I am a proud school head to have such students, but today you surprised me, guys. Like, we have great students who run such a webinar, the first time ever webinar. I can claim that I am surprised, very surprised. Lean and Eva, well done. Really, I am like, I, I am now, I can say that I am proudly leading this school which has such students like your kind. Our guest speakers, Mareike, Ghada, Naqi, I mean, and Sarah, I mean, I would like to express our big thanks to all of you. It is very beneficial. I learned a lot in this webinar. I know there are some challenges you faced, like especially with those who live in different countries with the time zone, and it's very early morning. And thank God that you are early, that all of you are morning ladies. So you are functioning, and you did a great job, and we benefit all from this webinar. And I can, like my logo in my life, as I told our ladies the other day, when we talk about men, women, I would like all the time like to use the letter L instead of all the time the thinking of competing. It's to completing. We are completing each other's. If we think of completing each other's instead of competing with each other's, life will be much easier. The ability of the woman, if we talk about who has more abilities, the man or the woman, I would like to say we are different. But if you insist of me, who is stronger, I will say the woman. The tasks that the woman can do at work and then going back home to do her tasks at home, we will never be able to do that, guys. So thank you so much. Thank you so much again.
Tech team, please display the certificates.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mumtaz. Thank you, girls. Thank you, Mr. Maher. Thank you for the visitors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hala. Okay, we have Mr. Naqi. Please accept the certificate of appreciation from our side.
This is Mr. Naqi.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, don't leave. I still have the vote of thanks to say.
Ms. Ghada, thank you so much for taking a part in this webinar. We benefit a lot as well. Mr. Naqi and Ms. Ghada, thank you so much. Ms. Sarah, thank you for your opening speech, and thank you so much for sharing your own story, which was full of we learned lots of from your story of taking down what made the way on our hearts. Thank you so much. Mareike, Dr. Mareike, thank you so much for the ideas you shared. We benefit a lot from them. Thank you so much for your time. And it was an honor having all of you in our first ever webinar. Lean, I'm very proud to have you in our school. You are the one. Thank you so much, Lean, for running such a very successful webinar. Eva, you were amazing, like as usual. Like, thank you so much for hosting us and running such a webinar. We will never do much better than what you did, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Maher, for your kind words. It means a lot.
You didn't ask me what to challenge. What did I choose to challenge?
Tell us.
What did you choose to challenge?
Actually, this year I chose to challenge the pandemic. I chose to challenge the current situation. The pandemic created a very tough situation, especially for us as educators in the schools, which made us decide to reach our students no matter what, to keep the learning teaching process rolling no matter what. And all together, the students, our students, they amazed us, our parents, our teachers, all together as a team, we did a great job in challenging this pandemic and this COVID-19. We continued the learning teaching process. We didn't pause. We didn't stop. So when we chose all together to challenge this pandemic, we succeeded. Thank God.
Thank you. That's a great answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mahir, for such inspirational words. Now moving on to the vote of thanks. Respected distinguished guests, management, teachers, and my dear lovely students, a very good afternoon to all of you. An event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. It requires a lot of planning and the bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated members. First of all, I would like to thank the management of our school for supporting us to carry out this webinar. We are very grateful to our inspirational speakers who have taken out their precious time to grace this occasion, to give valuable insights about their life to have a positive impact on our young audience. We are thankful to all the distinguished guests who took out their time to attend today's webinar. A sincere thanks goes to the tech team to make this event flow without any technical glitch. Here, I would like to mention Mr. Jayad George for helping us. We would like to thank our teachers and students to attend this webinar. This event would have not been possible without our shining stars, who, despite the preparation for the exams, devoted a lot of time to have meetings on a daily basis to take care of all the minute details. They are my student council members, the President, Leen, and the Vice President, Eva. Thank you once again. Over to you, Leen.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mumtaz. Now we'll be sharing a picture to inspire you all, and then we'll be having our closing ceremony.
Can we have all the guests open their cameras? Jayad, I'm so sorry, I don't know.
So now we'd like our guest speakers to say a few words about this webinar. What do you think of everything? Yes, Mr. Naqi.
Okay. I just want to say a huge thank you to the management of the school and Lee and Eva. I think you guys did a fantastic job. I feel very honored to have shared this stage with such esteemed panelists that we have here. So really glad, really honored. And I do hope that everyone who's been part of the webinar today will take something away that they can implement. You know, as we've heard before as well, it's not about those big decisions, it's not about those big milestones necessarily, it's about the small changes that we can make in our day-to-day life around that continuous improvement side to see how we can become better every single day. Because at the end, the point of all of us as human beings is to achieve our potential. It's not around perfection, it's around achieving our potential. So I hope everyone will do that. But thank you so much for having me today. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mr. Naqi. It was our honor to have all of you here. I think it's one of the best events we've had till now, and I'm really glad we had this opportunity to do it. Ms. Ghada, Dr. Mareike, do you have anything to say, any comments, any suggestions, perhaps?
I'll go second.
Well, thank you all. This was amazing. Even Lean, this was like very well organized. It was fun as well. Mrs. Mumtaz, thank you so much for inviting me and letting me be a part of this very amazing webinar. I hope I did my passion and my love for what I do and being passionate enough to go through all these challenges, travel through the screen to all the viewers. Thank you all. Thank you for the guests. This was like, I learned a lot. I enjoyed your sessions and your talk. Thank you so much.
And I think really I just want to echo those things. Thanks so much for having me. It's very interesting for me to see the kind of questions that are important. So I learn as much from being asked a question than I hope you might learn from listening to answers. So thank you for asking me these questions. And I guess my final thought would just be to really keep in mind that challenging is hard, and it will feel hard, and it's frustrating, and it means that you'll be challenged back, and that sometimes can be on fair terms, and then that's okay. You can have a constructive conversation, but really most of the time it's on pretty unfair terms, and it can be really painful, and it can hurt, and it can be frustrating, but that doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile doing. So good luck, and thanks again, and shukran.
Thank you. Can we all pause for just one screenshot virtual picture to wrap this all up?
So this is the theme's like basically logo. So please pause, Nicholas. All right then. Thank you all so much.
Okay, once again, thanks a lot, everyone, for devoting your precious time. If anyone wants to say anything from the audience, you're most welcome to say, because we are on time. We still have 5 minutes left.
Today, it's the Mother's Day here in the Middle East. Like, we are celebrating the Mother's Day. It's a good opportunity, since we are talking about this webinar about the International Day for Women. We are talking about the mothers here. We are celebrating today, March 21st. And the first thing I did this morning is to call my mother to say Happy Mother's Day, and my wife, who is a mother to my daughters as well. So I would like to say to all of you, the current mothers and the future mothers, Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Happy Mother's Day to all mothers.
Okay, is anyone coming from the audience? Because you all are unmuted if you want to share any of your experiences, or else we will adjourn the meeting. Okay, wish you all a very, very great times ahead and this week. Bye. So the meeting is adjourned.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, all the guests. Thank you, Lean. Thank you, everyone, for attending this webinar.
No, thank you, Ms. Mumtaz, for this organization. It took a lot of organizing.
Thank you all.
Thank you, girls, so much. Thank you.
Can we take a picture, just the three of us?
Yes.
Okay, I took it.
I will end the meeting exactly at 3.
Yeah, okay. The people
So
are still leaving. There are like 24
Yes.
participants left.